Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Deep to left field, going back is Locastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Excuse me, your host Ryan Coyle, as always, continuing on with our college football preview series, keeping it rolling here. We got so far we've got done Oklahoma State, Michigan, Memphis, Nebraska, LSU, Penn State, Colorado. For this, I just recorded Florida. In today's episode, we'll be heading to the ACC, I believe, for the first time. Yeah, for the first time. For this series, and we'll be hitting on the Clemson Tigers, one of the biggest brands in all of college football. But I think right now in the middle of a crossroads for the program, a team under Dabo Swinney that hasn't really shown the ability to interact with the portal or adapt to the portal so far. Interested to see if that helps them, if that hurts them this year. I think this is a big year in telling for that, whether or not the direction of the program is headed up or down. But I think this is a huge year for Clemson and kind of the future of what that brings. They have a poor year. I'm not saying Dabo Swinney could get fired, but it could be one of those scenarios where he potentially goes and looks for another job, looks for, not a bigger job, but just a different job at a similar level. Like I could potentially see if like an Arkansas opens up or something, and they go 7-5 at Clemson this year, and Arkansas fires their coach after a 4-8 year, Sam Pittman. Maybe Dabo Swinney makes that kind of move over to Arkansas and goes over to the SEC and tests his fortune there. But he's a guy that I'm not really that high on right now. I think that it's pretty stupid, pretty comical not to use the transfer portal and the ability that it has shown to help other teams, at least at this level right now. But he's a guy that you can't really argue with his history. He's 107-43 in his 16 years as a head coach. He has 2 national championships. He has 8 ACC titles. So I don't think he's in a position where we can fully start to question him yet. But a lot of his success has come with Trevor Lawrence, has come with Deshaun Watson. We haven't really seen the type of high-level success without those guys in the building. DJ kind of struggled there under him. Cade Klubnik had an up-and-down freshman year or first year starting last year at Clemson. So I think this is a big year for Dabo Swinney and proving it and what this Clemson program can be, because we're not that far off that it was them in Alabama as 1 and 2 in college football, going back and forth, winning national titles. Now, obviously, programs like Georgia have surpassed them. You can make an argument. Teams like Oregon are coming for them. Michigan has since won a national title in that span. Ohio State's still up there at the top. I don't really think Clemson is kind of talked about in that top 5 to top even 10 right now college football programs. I mean, Florida State, I think, even jumped them in their own conference last year. Winning that game in the regular season and then winning the ACC title, and would have gone to the playoff if Jordan Travis hadn't gotten hurt. So it's a huge year, kind of think, for the trajectory of Clemson, and kind of weird to throw this team in there, but like with the money that they have, and if they have a strong first year, a team like SMU could potentially even start climbing down there in Texas in the ACC and potentially be at the top. So a lot of pressure on Dabo and Clemson this year. When you look at their 2023 season, 9-4, they went 4-4 in ACC play, which was only good for 6th in the conference. Lost that first game on that first week on Monday Night Football to Duke, and that kind of, I think, set the tone for the season that this could potentially be a long one. First time, though, last year in 12 years that Clemson failed to win double-digit games. The offense fumbled the ball the 3rd most of any team in the country. So when you look at that kind of statistic and an anomaly there, that's something that if they fumble it, 3 or 4 less times, they might win 1 or 2 more games. They might be a double-digit win team. So they have to secure the football better. We'll talk about that more when we talk about the offense. But they did win 5 in a row to end the season. They only went 3-3 in 1-score games. So another thing that we talked about in multiple episodes so far. You flip the script there, and it's all right. They went 5-1 in 1-score games. All right, all of a sudden they're 11-2, or they went 1-5 in 1-score games. Then they're not even a bowl team. So you can look at it through either type of prism there, but they went 3-3 in the 1-score games last year, but ending the season winning 5 in a row, that is impressive and shows, I think, that they're kind of building some momentum. But that also goes to show that, at one point they were only 4-4. So what really trajectory is this Clemson program going with? This is a big telltale year, and they're one of the teams I think that have not the most pressure, but are going to have kind of the most focus around them. Like a team like Florida that we talked about in last episode, they're going to have a lot of eyes on them for what they do with that super tough schedule. Alabama's going to have a lot of eyes on them with Nick Saban no longer there. But Clemson, I think, for a team that has an existing coach, a team that has been an existing power in college football, it's going to be a lot of eyeballs on them this year to see what they bring to the table. But they had 6 freshmen start at least 3 or more games last year. They're going to be counting on those guys and the youth to step it up in year 2. The defense ranked top 30 in every category. It was a really strong unit last year. The offense ranked top 60 in all categories, but wasn't nearly as strong as as the defense, and turning it over a lot certainly hurt them last year. All 6 of those freshmen, though, that started at least 3 games last year, none of them transferred, but this was a team that brought in 0 guys from the transfer portal. Pretty unheard of in all of college football now. But we'll get into the offense, the defense, and then get into my scheduled prediction for Clemson this year. Offense, you look at them, they returned 7 starters. I think it really is going to come down to if Cade Klubnik can live up to the hype of what he was kind of recruited and brought in to be, and be the next Trevor Lawrence, the next Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's ever going to reach that status, as those 2 guys have gone on to play a lot of NFL football, be first-round picks, win a lot of football games, go to the playoffs in the NFL. Cade Klubnik is even really on draft boards right now. I don't even know. I don't think he's a guy that is being kind of discussed in that light, but a lot of pressure on him to live up to the name of the Clemson quarterback. Last year, in his first year as a starter, he completed 64% of his passes for 19 TDs and 9 interceptions. Obviously, there's hope that he can grow in year 2 under Garrett Riley at Clemson, who was the OC the previous year, Lincoln Riley's younger brother, at TCU, when he took that offense all the way to the national title game. So there is a lot of hope and optimism that Cade Klubnik's able to step it up in year 2 here. And I think that certainly starts with the turnovers. I remember specifically in that Duke game, they had 2 turnovers in the red zone. They really kind of flipped the script on those games. But Clemson this year does bring back 5 of its top 7 receivers from last year, most notably Antonio Williams, Tyler Brown, and tight end Jake Briggenstool. A few freshmen are expected to compete for spots and receptions as well in this offense. If you exclude, and I know it's excluding their highest output of the year, but it was against an inferior opponent here in Charleston Southern. But if you exclude the 66-point outing against Charleston Southern, the team only had 6 games of 30-plus points. Clemson, historically, as we talked about with those quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, we were used to seeing not only really strong defensive teams, as Clemson seems to always have year in, year out, whether it's a good year or a bad year, but the offenses were able to go out there and win shootouts, put up big scoring numbers, win in these kind of high-scoring affairs. I don't think if that Clemson team was faced with that last year, they were able to. 6 games of 30-plus points. Like I said, in the day and age of high-scoring passing attacks, that isn't going to cut it out against these upper echelon teams if they want to compete for national titles. Because at Clemson, what they did last year, a 9-4 year, 90 to 95% of college football programs across the country are doing backflips and doing cartwheels down their campus drive if they're able to do that all the way down to the football facility. But when you're at Clemson, I posted a highlight today on Twitter of the Travis Etienne touchdown run. It was from week 1 a few years back. The highlight was in the score bug. It had the record from the previous year, 15-0. Like, I'm not saying that's the expectation every year, but they're supposed to be a team, at least, especially with the playoff expanding to 12 teams now, competing for playoff spots, competing for national titles. That is the standard that has been built at Clemson. And I don't think they should kind of take their foot off the gas and expect anything else in that. The offensive line has 3 starters returning as well. They also return running back Phil Maffa, lose running back Will Shipley, who is one of the better runners in the SEC and a really good returner as well. But Maffa is a downhill back. He arguably might be a better pure runner, but Shipley was able to kind of catch the ball out of the backfield and do a little bit of everything. But Maffa averaged 5.4 yards per carry last year on 965 rushing yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Going to be one of, if not the top running back in the ACC this year. But it is going to come down to Klubnik's progression and his growth here in year 2 under Riley and the turnovers for this offense. They turned it over 22 times last year, and they fumbled 13 times. Clean that up with the defense. They should be in position to compete once again for the ACC crown. and be a double-digit win team if they're not winning the ACC, competing at least for one of those last few at-large kind of playoff spots. And a name that has been buzzing throughout the spring and the summer down in Clemson is wide receiver, 5-star freshman, I believe. He's a 5-star, but Brian Weso Jr., he's a freshman that everyone's buzzing on, and Dabo says it's going to have an impact right away. So that's a name to keep an eye out for. It could potentially help Klubnik grow in his game as well. Now we go to the defense. As we touched on, they ranked top 30 in every single defensive category. It was a top 10 defense last year in total defense, ranking 8th. They held their opponents to 20 or less in 6 of their games. Also was really strong against the pass. That's where the defense was the strongest last year. 8th fewest passing yards per game. Unit only returns 3 starters from last year. While the offense returns some more pieces, this is a defense that only returns 3 starters from that really strong group. Barrett Carter is the key to the defense. He's going to be a preseason All-American at linebacker, and he has to step up his game. He's already been a really good player, but with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. there, the leader for the past few years there in the middle at linebacker, being out and being with the Philadelphia Eagles now, Barrett Carter is going to have to step up. They do have one of the most promising defensive linemen in the country in Peter Woods. He was a freshman All-American last year. I expect him to be an All-ACC caliber player too. Defensive coordinator Wes Goodwin last year relied on a lot of blitzing, and that led to a top 10 unit in the country. Expect that to be the same this year. One of those things, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, they're going to bring pressure. They're going to bring blitzes. And when you have corners, though, which they did last year, when you have corners that were able to, sticky coverage, be good lockdown kind of coverage, you are able to bring the pressure. Nate Wiggins got drafted in the first round to the Ravens, and then Andrew Mabuka transferred to Texas. So when you're ushering in 2 new corners, it might be a little bit of a different look because your corners might be asked to do a little bit more, or as the 2 starters were last year, you might have to throw some different kind of looks on defense because you won't be able to rely on pressure as much. But I expect them to try and do a lot of what they did last year because it's Clemson. They're going to have some other guys being able to step up that are young, high prioritized recruits. But so this defense is littered with talent. Even if they didn't use the portal, like I said, brought in 0 players on the offensive, defensive, or even the specialists with the kicker and punter. They didn't touch the portal at all. Pretty unheard of at all. They were the only team that didn't do that last year. But a defense that was littered with high-profile recruits who got a lot of experience last year. As I said, between the offense and defense, they had 6 freshmen last year start at least 3 games at a high-tier program like Clemson. That's some pretty strong experience. So I'm expecting this group to be a top 15 and 20 group again, but they should take a bit of a step back from last season, losing their 2 top corners and only having 3 starters return. It's going to be hard to emulate that exact success, but still should be a pretty strong unit this year. All right. We'll get into my Clemson preview now. Really hard week 1 matchup going against Georgia. I believe that one's at the Falcon Stadium in Atlanta, but we'll share my screen and go through my entire breakdown for this Georgia squad. That week 1 game, they're already a 13-point dog, I believe it is. That's going to be a tough one against Georgia. I'm going to go Georgia there. App State, certainly no cupcake as well. And would I be stunned if it happened? No, but I will be pretty surprised if App State does go into Clemson and wins. But it won't be the most surprising result of that Saturday. I can bet you that, because App State projected to win the Sun Belt. They're going to have a lot of people taking them against the spread that game, probably at least to cover the number. But App State's a team that if they want to compete for that G5 automatic berth, and they figured they were going to run through the Sun Belt. They have the game against Liberty as well. That Clemson game can be a huge resume booster, and who knows, it goes into there, beats Clemson, and there you are. Clemson, you're starting 0-2 already. That's a tough game, and a game that Clemson's probably a little bit upset that they scheduled, but we'll give Clemson the win there. NC State, I'll give them a win in that one. Stanford, it's weird to see that as a conference game, but I'm going to give them a win in that one as well. Florida State, they go to Florida State in that one. That obviously is going to be a tough one. I will give Florida State the nod there. So Clemson already at 2 losses. Wake Forest, I'll give Clemson the win there. Virginia, I'm going to give them a win. Virginia, I'm not going to say it's going to be sneaky good, but I think could give some teams some trouble. Be like a 4 or 5 win team instead of a 2-3 win team, but potentially steal a few. But I will give Clemson the win there. Louisville, that's not an easy one. Louisville went to the ACC title last year, returns a lot, brought in a lot of guys from the portal as well. But I will give Clemson the win there at home. My surprise team this year out of the ACC, maybe even all college football, I think could win 10 games. Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech by that point in the year, I think is going to be rolling. That's going to be a night game, probably going to be an awesome atmosphere. I'll give Virginia Tech the win there. So Clemson had 3 losses. And then I'll have Clemson finishing out the year 3-0, beating Pitt, the Citadel, and South Carolina. So I have this Clemson team going 9-3 this season. Is that good enough for Clemson fans? Like I said, 90 to 95% of college football programs are doing cartwheels and handstands down their driveway as they approach the campus football facility, if that's the case. But Clemson, is that good enough? In my eyes, it's not for what they've built the standard into. 9-3 with your 3 biggest games, probably with Georgia, Florida State, and Virginia Tech. You got Louisville thrown in there as well. That's a tough one that I gave them a win. But your 3 toughest games, arguably on the schedule, in my opinion, you're losing. Those are games that, even if they are on the road, you're expected to at least go in there and compete and have a shot to win in the past if you're Clemson. But I have this team going 9-3. They are 40-1 to win the Natty, plus 190 to make the playoff, minus 250 to not make the playoff. So they're a strong favorite there to miss the playoff this year. Plus 350 to win the ACC, and the over-under wins is sitting at 9.5. Over is plus 135. Under 9.5 is minus 160. As I said, I have them 9-3, so I'm kind of sitting right there. Along with Vegas, but I'm not touching a future for them. I just don't think the under 9.5 at minus 160 is necessarily worth it, because if Klubnik does take a jump, I could see them certainly winning 10 games. So at that point, you get them there kind of plus money. It's just a stay away for me. Clemson's going to be a team I do look to fade in the early goings, as I said, with the departures on the defense. I think could have some struggles, and that App State spot in week 2 is a sweet spot, especially if Georgia finds a way to go out there and does cover the spread against them and kind of dismantles them by a couple of touchdowns. Clemson could be in for a bit of a culture shock. So keep an eye out on that week 2 App State game. That could be an interesting one. But 9-3 Clemson this year, obviously good enough to go to a bowl game, but I don't think we'll be going to the college football playoff this year. But as always, everyone, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.